In this video, we're going to review heat detection and service timing. The heat detection report can be found under View Advanced Reports, Fertility, and Heat Detection. The first chart that we'll see is the overall submission rate. The x-axis is divided into months, and in each month we plot the number of cows that are due a service, as well as the proportion of them that are served. So if we hide some series and break the graph down, we can see here we're just showing the number of cows that are due a service. So the number of cows that are eligible to be served. That's defined by the number of first services and the number of returned services. First services are for cows that are beyond the voluntary wait period within the first 21 days after the end of the voluntary wait period. By default, that is set to 42 days, but that can be changed in configuration and parameters, and we'll look at that in a second. Return services are defined by cows that have had a serve in that lactation and they're due their next serve within 18 to 24 days after the previous serve. So that's roughly correlating to the expected estrus window length that we see in the modern dairy cow. We can see from this chart that there is quite a lot of variation in the number of cows that are eligible for service from month to month. So that could be due to changes in the calving pattern, or it could be due to changes in heat detections and service submission rates. Now I'm going to add the submission rate by month over the last 2 years in green bars. These are read to the left axis. We can see that on average around 50% of serves are carried out in each month period, but there is still quite a lot of variation from month to month. Then we can add the rolling 3-month submission rate. Here we can see that there is some seasonality in submission rate. There appears to be a drop in submission rate in February, March 2020, and again in December, January of 2021. So this looks like it might be a seasonal trend in submission rate. So submission rate appears to be worse during winter housing. That might be due to poor heat detection, or it might be due to poor heat expression. That's something to investigate further. The next 2 tabs in this report break this down further into just the first services, so those occurring within 42 days to 63 days of lactation, versus return submissions. So looking at first service submission rate, the first thing you'll see is that drops on this farm. Actually, the first service submission rate is lower than the overall submission rate across the last 2 years. Again, there appears to be some seasonality, which may be due to changes in heat detection, changes in heat expression, or it might be a deliberate strategy by the farmer. Next, we look at the return submission rate on this farm, and generally the return submission rate is higher. It's averaging between 50, 60, 70% over the last 2 years. Again, there is a little bit of seasonality in heat detection, heat expression, or deliberate service patterns. At the moment, we're looking at heat detection for return services over the past 2 years, but if we wanted to look over a longer period, we can do that by changing the criteria in the standard criteria pane. So for example, instead of looking at over 24 months, we might choose to look at submission rate over 48 months, so 4 years. And this TotalVet is now recalculating the submission rate over a longer period of time. We may also want to change the way we're calculating average submission rate. So we might want to move it to a rolling 12-month submission rate rather than a rolling 3-month submission rate. Here we can see this flattens out the general submission rate over the last 4 years. There hasn't been a huge amount of change in the average submission rate for return services, although there has been a little bit of seasonality from month to month. If we want to look into return services in more detail, we can do so using the Service Intervals tab. This chart shows the proportion of services by the service window from the previous serve. So we can see that the majority of serves in this case are occurring within the desired service window, so at 18 to 24 days following the previous serve. So that accounts for about 55% of services on this farm. We've got a small number of cows that are being served at an implausibly short window, 2 to 17 days. Double-clicking on this bar will bring up a list of these cows, and you can see that some of them have been served only 3 days after their previous service. These are likely to be inappropriate. It might reflect cystic cows, or it might reflect problems with heat detection. Towards the right of the graph, we can see cows that are being served at an elongated service window. So are these cows that are having heat missed, or are these cows that are having early embryonic loss, causing an irregular estrus interval. If we wanted to investigate first services of lactation, we could do this using the first service timing tab. The target serve window is shown by this green block. This is defined as the voluntary wait period plus the estrus window length. In this example, that is 42 days plus 21 days, so 42 to 63 days of lactation. We can see that a reasonable number of cows are being served prior to the start of the voluntary wait period, and we've also got some cows that are being served very late in lactation. Again, double-clicking on these bars will give you a list of these cows that are being served at inappropriate times. By looking at the proportion of serves that result in a successful outcome, i.e. a pregnancy, compared to all first services, we can also get an idea of the first service conception rate. In this farm, we can see that the majority of first services don't result in a successful pregnancy. The last tab on this report shows a very similar visualization for evaluating age at first service in heifers. The green area on this chart shows the target age at first service in order to reach the target age at first calving, which has been defined. By default, the target age at first calving is 2 years or 730 days, although this can be changed under configuration, parameters, and in the fertility section. Users can also change the settings for the voluntary wait period in this place. This will impact the overall submission rate calculation and the first service timing graph. Next, I'm going to show you a way to compare age at first service over a number of years using the split screen function. If you close advanced reports and hit view split current function, this splits the heat detection report into 2 windows. In this case, we want to focus on the age at first service. Hit adjust chart twice in order to fit the graph nicely to the window. So on the left, we're going to change the period that we're interested in, and we're going to go back in time 2 years to look at the period of 2019. Now we've got a comparison of the age at first service in the most recent 2 years compared to the 2 years previously. And here we can see quite nicely that the age at first service has dropped, and it's become much more clustered around that target age that we're aiming for. So there is an improvement in our heifer serving and this farm in the last 2 years. So has this resulted in an improved age at first calving? Well, we can have a look at that in the calving pattern report. Once again, if we close advanced reports and split the current function, hit adjust the chart at the bottom to fit the screen, then we can choose to view the age at first calving over a 24-month period. In the current 2 years and in the previous 2 years. And here we can see that as a result of serving those heifers earlier, actually the age at first calving has shifted to the left in the current 2 years. So we have improved our age at first calving, so heifers are calving it earlier on in their life. That was a quick introduction to heat detection and service timing. I hope you find this really useful when looking at fertility data in cows and also in heifers.